The pandemic, as it goes nowadays, is doing nothing else than reminding you that you're losing, well, all the rights that you thought you have. Now, what is a thought? Now, what is a belief? Well, a belief is accepting something without the necessity for proof, right? And the thing is, as the pandemic goes, it's obvious that, well, people are losing more and more of their rights. Now, of course, you're probably kind of knowledgeable about this, but there is a question that I've been asking other people, and so many people fuss and worry about this, right? Like, our rights are all being taken away, but the question is, since I prefer being the seer and seeing things the way they are and reminding people that things aren't the way they think they are. Now the question is this: why do you think you're losing your rights? Like, in the first place, do you think you ever had any rights? Now, of course, there will be a lot of fighting against these ideas because the mind always works as a prison if you are ignorant. And of course, for thousands and thousands of years, people have lived in ignorance because, well, it takes a very long time to embrace the idea of awareness. And of course, there is a great struggle to jump into awareness because awareness means taking a lot of responsibility, which is kind of the nemesis of a lot of people's, comfort zone, right? You don't want to leave the comfort zone because that is comfortable, right? But that kind of ends up as your prison. Now, of course, throughout existence, people have created rules, regulations, laws, and the such, and they've made a lot of abuses around those as well. But the laws are nothing else than a justification of the mind. The mind needs those details, right? The mind needs classification because the mind is only and all about control, right? Now, what is technically the mind? From a spiritual perspective, right, the mind is represented by the three lower chakras, main, let's say, lower chakras of the body, right? You may be knowledgeable that the body has 7 of these, right, starting from the root chakra to the crown chakra. Now, the body has, 3 lower chakras, right, the Muladhara, the Swadhisthana, and the Manipura. These chakras represent the physical body. And, well, in the end, they represent nothing else than survival. Muladhara is, the first chakra situated in between the, the anus and the, sexual organ. This chakra represents the survival, right? It represents the survival of the physical body, right? It represents existence and, well, survival of your individuality. I mean, well, your physical body, right? Physical survival. And it is blocked by fear, right? And why do you think so many people are being constantly bombarded with fear? Because, well, fear creates insecurities, and insecurities move you away from your center of power, right? That is why so many people, narcissistic, sociopathic tendencies always have this aspect, right? They don't want you to be in your seat of power. Now, the Swadhisthana is the second chakra, right? This one concerns, social survival. And if it is going in awkward energies, right, you're gonna end up, in sort of feeling somewhat competitive. Your relationship with families and your other people will be somewhat abusive, or you will run away from people, right? Social distancing. And this kind of problematic because social distancing kind of destabilizes this chakra in a way as well. I mean, not the chakra necessarily, because they are much more complex than what most sources present them as, but the energies representing them, let's say, and the state of awareness that a person has regarding that chakra, because the second chakra represents your relationship with your family and, well, the way you socially interact with other people. And of course, parents use a lot of shaming towards the people, towards the children, and of course, school also does this. So many friends of yours do this, and it's obvious that most people already have a blockage in here. And of course, with financial constricting and, control of society and consumerism that makes physical objects more interesting than the people, because, people are made to be used and objects made to be loved nowadays. The point is, there will always be an idea of a lack in the sense of survival, right? The physical survival. You never have enough money and you're always going to get stuck in that mindset, right? Which, of course, a lot of people who are, again, exploiters will use that as, a sense of bringing you a sort of salvation, right? They always have those courses out there that, they are made to make you rich, but there is no such thing as getting rich fast, right? No one ever got rich fast, well, unless they are kind of lying or they kind of hit a huge jackpot, which is most likely not gonna be found on the internet. The third chakra, which is the Manipura, represents the survival of the self. This is the self-image. Now, self is an accumulation. It is an invention. It is something that you create. You identify yourself with certain things. This is something that the child uses when they are young, since they identify with heroes from cartoons, from movies, books, video games, whatever. It is a way through which they discover their own selves. Now, the child has to lie a lot when they are young, because psychology also supports this. The child explores a lot of parts from within them. But of course, parents have to punish them, to pull them down, because, well, when you are an ignorant fuck, you want everyone else to suffer at least 1,000 times more than you do, because, well, you're just an ignorant fuck. And, this is how the truth is. I'm not making this up. But again, to many people who are ignorant, when you are ignorant, you can't feel the extent of pain that you are feeling. And of course, you'll obviously not feel the extent of pain that you are creating and inflicting upon other people, right? And, there is that quote that says, well, when you are dead, you just don't know about it. And of course, everyone else around you may well be suffering. It's the same thing when you are stupid. And what does it mean to be stupid? Well, stupid is synonymous to ignorant because, well, they are perfect synonyms. A person who is stupid is a person who doesn't know things, which usually ignorance implies this, and at the same time they don't want to learn things, because in the end that is the worst thing. They hate change, they oppose change, right? They don't want things to become better. Couple this with a social aspect in which, people's low self-esteem and many other lower vibrational aspects, right, will render a lot, if not most of the people, far easier to fool than to convince that they have been fooled, right? It's a principle by which mass media go very well, right? People are given the impression that they are something on their social media, right? That's why they fight for that persona, right? They believe that they are this, star showing their cars and, their pompous life. But in the end, most of those cases, it's just nothingness, right? They are just fighting, struggling to keep a persona that is not even real, right? Because a persona basically is an identification. You have to act like this, you have to act like that, because you have to fulfill your parents, your grandparents, society's expectations, teachers' expectations, one by one, friends, spouse, whatever, and you end up having a contorted aspect of yourself, which is nothing else than a set of beliefs. And, well, what's a belief? It's accepting something without the necessity for proof, which is technically ignorance. Now, ignorance, as I've been presenting it till now, is nothing else than accepting literally everything without the use of your discernment. That is the reason why you're also fussing about when someone calls you an idiot, let's say. Someone says you're an idiot, you fuss about it. When you fuss about it, it means that you accept the fact that you're an idiot. But at the same time, well, you don't ask the question, wait, what? I mean, why does someone call me an idiot, right? And this shows already two things. First of all, you're ignorant, and secondarily, you don't know yourself, which is kind of synonymous to being ignorant, because ignorants don't know themselves. An ignorant is kind of the same thing as a lazy person. They don't want to do anything, and obviously they don't want to do anything. They just embrace the comfort zone of not doing anything, and, well, they simply have little to no self-preservation, right? They won't fight for much of their ideas, right? They will always expect someone else to do things, right? And we have kind of so many people in this vibration. It's always the government that has to do something. It's always authorities that have to do something for them when they go. And this ignorance always leads to people believing they are big people on this planet, right? They are just a piece of earth that, it's kind of created from their parents, right? They come into this world, they accumulate food and all sorts of things, which, well, technically becomes their body, and ultimately they believe they are someone on this planet. And of course, this narcissistic tendency bursts into a rage when they kind of realize that they are mortal, because the illusions they have been trying so desperately to preserve, right? Those illusions will pop because there is something hideous called death. And the point is, once they shed their body, they will also shed their, invented perfection, right? Their sense of being someone is going to be taken away. Now, all these things, okay, well, they are very toxic to the person because, well, they're causing a lot of karma, a lot of suffering, which probably in that life or in other lives they will have to sort through. Now, the point is, all these ideas, right, they're just simply distractions. They are distractions created by the mind to justify all sorts of things, just like victimization. It's always someone else's fault. It's much easier to blame someone for something, right? If something goes wrong in society, the authorities haven't been doing what they should be doing, the government's fault, the president's fault, the people's fault, right? It's always their neighbor, someone else, right? This is just a distraction. And a distraction obviously depicts ignorance. And of course, science is also another way of distracting yourself, right? We have so many classifications, so many over classifications. Now, I'm not saying those are bad, okay? But the point is, they're kind of used as a distraction because you're attaching meaning to those, okay? You're saying there are multiple races of squirrels and sub-races, or, types and subtypes of trees and the such. But you only attach a meaning and a set of principles and parameters, let's say, to those. And, well, whenever you say a certain tree, like an oak, you only think about the principles or aspects of that, right? And you're always gonna miss the life of that. Similarly, when you think of a friend, you think of several ideas, like how they look, how they behave, right? But you miss the life of them. And you have so many of these people, right? Nowadays, I see so many people, young or older, they just stay together, right? As if it's a gathering, but the only thing they do is they stay with their nose glued to their phone. And, well, that's kind of sarcastic because, well, as I've been saying, they stay out, but they spend time with their phone, not with the other people. So it's always that people are missing the life within everything, literally everything else, right? They're not sensing the life even in the inanimate objects, right? We call them inanimate because they don't move, but they do have a life of their own, right? Because there is vibration within those. There is a vibration, and where there's a vibration, there's also a sound. So now we also use rules and regulations and the such because we want control, right? Everyone wants control, especially when their third chakra is somewhat imbalanced, right? The energies they live in are, well, derived out of all sorts of awkward sources, right? They want control over everything, and the mind will always want control. So, when you couple imbalances in, your place of power, you will always end up as domineering, okay? Because you can only be controlling, right? When you want others to exert control over you, it's still a control that you're exerting over them, and they are playing by your control. It's a principle that I presented in a video I made called Why the Master is the Slave and Why the Slave is the Master. And this goes very well in sadomasochistic relationships, right? Because you have the slave who's actually the master, because they are paying the master, or most likely they are behaving in such a way through which they are subliminally or even verbally calling, what they want from the master. And the master is technically the slave because they are delivering what the slave wants. And they are delivering them pleasure, which means also energy, and they're delivering some of their time, right? So there is this is always the exchange that goes on. Now, when it comes to the law and the such, all these ideas, okay, they are just principles that we mentally agreed to. We collectively agreed that there is a constitution. We collectively agreed that there are countries, okay? And, well, of course, this comes with control. Why do you think different songs were banned, right? Like the verse is, imagine there's no countries, right? This song was banned, right? Because people who rule, they are ignorant and they want others to be at least as ignorant as them, right? And ignorance also means division, because ignorance means accepting literally everything. So you become like a bunch of clumped data and information that you identify yourself with, and obviously you will have a sense that you are better than the others. So the problem is you will always have a fight with the others, because, well, you identify yourself with certain things. So honestly, when you identify yourself with something, you already ditch everything which is not similar to you, right? So yeah, now the point is, of course, the rights that we have created, they never existed, right? Society acted in such a way, to give you a certain sense that, you have certain rights. But just look in the history, right? In the medieval times, do you think anyone could speak just like now? I mean, of course, there is no such thing as freedom of speech even nowadays, especially with all the censorship and the such, because, everyone is fighting against the truth, because the truth is the greatest fear of ignorance, right? Every person that you have in your life that is ignorance, their greatest fear will be that of losing you. And also their greatest fear will be that you realize your potential, that you become conscious of yourself. Why do you think they will doubt you? Why do you think they will pull you down? Right? Why do you think they will do everything possible to make sure that, well, almost everything possible, to make sure that you remain with them? They are afraid of losing you. That can be the case of your parents, your friends, That is why so many people are clingy, right? They don't want things to change, because in ignorance you will always oppose change. Change is the death of things and is the only constant. And of course, people don't want to die. That is another aspect of ignorance. That is why people live off cybernetic bodies, right? They think about these, but at the same time they forget one thing. When you die, you will leave that body behind. It doesn't matter if it's cybernetic, if it is mental, if it is physical, psychological, or whatever. You cannot contain, the body, right? You cannot contain it forever. You may use all the occult knowledge and the such, but usually it's much easier to pull a body out from a physical shell than to put it inside a shell, okay? And, well, when the time comes for that to leave, they will literally leave, right? That, let's call it the soul, as Christianity calls it. When it leaves, it leaves. It doesn't matter if you put it into a cybernetic body, or if you keep it into an elemental body, or if you keep it into a physical body. When the time comes, it will simply live. Of course, a lot of people have been poisoned by sci-fi that, robots are immortal, right? The robots can never perish. But through robots, the idea of control, right, will be far more powerful, because control over robots is instant, right? The programs run so fast, they're instantly controllable, right? And programming means creation of limitations, right? Think about video games. Everything in a video game is limited, right? The amount of resources that you have, the amount of possibilities that you have, the artificial intelligence of the characters is also limited, because that's what programming means. You create a sense of meaning that things follow, right? And, well, just that's what society is, right? Because society is just a bunch of meaning. You have a constitution that says you can do this or you can't do this, but whoever respects the constitution, right? So many politicians are not, right? They are fighting against the freedoms of people, and now everyone seems to be fighting against that, right? Governments all want you vaccinated, governments all want you do this, all want you to do that, right? It's always a struggle for power. And you can always see this in the fall of empires. Every time there is a fall of empires or something, there will always be repression, there will always be censorship, there will always be, things like that, right? Society has long since imploded into a black hole, and there are a lot of people who just want to make sure that you're also taken with them, right? Because, well, that's how ignorant people are. If they suffer, you also have to suffer. If the boat goes down, they want you down with them, because, well, that's their kind of only impulse, right? It's not necessarily a pleasure, it is an impulse. They must do that, right? It's life or death choice. So the point about this is, well, if all the rights that we're prancing about that we're losing. Well, the black hole's purpose, right? Any black hole's purpose is to simply strip matter and recreate it into, well, what it once was, right? Nothingness. So the point is, society has collapsed into a black hole. And its purpose, the purpose of this implosion, is to remind people that, well, there kind of never has been meaning. We created meaning. We created the languages. We created the meaning of each word, even if, funnily speaking, we kind of have forgotten what those words mean. And we've just been playing this sick role, right? In which, well, we have been wounded emotionally, mentally. We don't know who we are, what we are. We run away from our truth, right? We run away from what we truly are, technically our shadow. And, well, we just play this game along, right? Shakespeare said the whole world is a stage and we are just actors. When I was very young, I told myself I'm the best actor on the stage of my life, right? And that long before I heard Shakespeare's idea. So the point about this is all the rights and the things, okay, they were just in our minds, right? They were just a justification. They were just a need, right? We always have been seeking that utopia, right? But that utopia is only a need, right? It's always been entropy that we have been going towards because, well, entropy means the natural tendency towards chaos that each and everything has, right? And, well, ignorance supports entropy. That is why we see everything around us falling apart. The way we have been living our lives is no longer sustainable. So, honestly, there was a high time for a big change to come. So, all this being said, well, hopefully you realize that the rights that you were or you are kind of fussing about, well, you believe that you are losing, right? They never existed. Society existed in a certain way. Yes, people were more aware at a certain time, but the agendas, okay, you have to realize the world is always run on agendas. These agendas will always be thought of dozens of years, okay, in advance. And the point is, when they have to be applied, they will be applied. Everything is planned in this world. Nothing works without structure and rigorosity because that's how the mind works. You won't see people ruling the world emotionally. Everyone rules this world mentally because, well, that's the most that ignorant people will manifest, because ignorance is about running away from emotions, right? You don't want to accept pain, your pain, because you believe in your mind that you are incapable of dealing with it, right? You always find these justifications. You're too weak, you're too insignificant, and everyone else or so many of the other people are always going to be much better, right? Those juicy lies that ignorant people say. So, yes, why do you think there is so much censorship? Well, censorship there has always been, right? But we, first of all, didn't know about it, and secondarily, it was meant not to be for a long while, because think about all the times that we have spent as a race, right? We had antiquity and we had the Middle Ages, right? They were represented by monarchies usually, or empires, right? And in there, the power belonged to certain people who would obviously not allow anyone to speak against them, right? So definitely that was a lack of rights, right? And there was always so much abuse, which clearly shows there was no regard towards human life and obviously any right that would support that. And of course, nowadays we have the human rights, but who the fuck actually takes them into account when you have so many governments fighting one against the other, countries fighting wars, and people taking part in wars that don't even, they don't even take them into account, right? So many, let's say, American soldiers have gone into Asia and fought so many wars against people they don't even know, and most likely people who haven't even done anything against them. But, well, again, this is how things really go. So, yes, hopefully you realize that there has never been any right, okay, other than the books, the papers that we all believe they are so important, but they are just a justification of the mind. The mind will always want justifications. It's just a bunch of lies that people create because you always need to believe in something, right? That is why the point of ignorance, right? You always believe in something else. You always believe that a God created you because you don't want to accept the simple fact that, well, this universe once didn't exist and then it came into existence. This universe is represented by 114 chakras, which represent our physical body, right? And the mind is represented by only 3 chakras. Now the question is, why do many people think that with the power of their mind, namely only 3 of the chakras in the body, they can understand all the 114 aspects of life, right? All the 114 dimensions, aspects, whatever you want to call them about life, right? Which is far more complex. And they believe that, the logical mind is an answer for everything. But the logical mind is only needed by, ignorant people. It's not when you are aware, of course, the logical mind is also somewhat good, but the more aware you become, the more you embrace consciousness and awareness, you'll realize that the mind needs to just be shut down, because the mind is only useful for survival. It belongs to the physical body, and its only purpose is to gather information that allows you to exist. And, well, namely, that's kind of it. That's the purpose of the mind. It handles your physical existence, it handles your social existence, and it handles, of course, your self-existence, okay? What you believe is you, right? And, well, this reset that people are fussing about is nothing else than a reminder that literally everything is part of the game. We have created all the meaning, we have created countries, we have created nationalities, because we have been ignorant fucks that, always wanted separation, because ultimately what we wanted is some kind of attention, some kind of sense through which we are different, we are better than others, because, well, attention from others is what we need, and we feel that we are not worthy of attention if we are not unique, right? If we are not different. But, well, guess what? You've been just an ignorant fuck who wasn't ever told in the first place, and most likely through ignorance they never realized that, well, you're already, well, unique, let's say. Everyone is unique in their own way. But of course, school, society, and everyone has been taught to think that, well, no, everyone has to be kind of the same thing, right? All societies, they want you to be a part of them, right? But are you really a part of society? Because society doesn't give a damn about you, and never has society done that, right? You will never see people giving a damn about you, especially the higher they are in hierarchy, because they are far more, the higher you go in hierarchy as an ignorant, the more you will succumb to the idea that, well, you have a high status now, and of course you have to ensure that, because the more matter you have, the more material you gain, right? The more materialistic you become, the more of a slave you are, right? Everyone says that the more you have, the freer you will feel. But the point is, how can you be free when you have so many physical things? The more you own, right, in things, you won't be using most of those, right? You can have 10 cars, but you can only drive one at the same time. So they won't be filling any void in your life. Now, I'm not saying owning a lot of cars or renting them is bad. It's not bad. There is no such thing as good or bad. But ultimately, the point is, any number of objects that you use, any number of games that you play, any number of things that you buy, they won't fill the void that you will have inside of you. That can only be filled by realizing who and what you are. And, well, I've been presenting things about that in other of my videos, directly or indirectly, because I always sow many seeds into others. I'm not willing to provide flat answers because, well, my answers are for people who want to realize them, not just read some or hear some answers, because they will take those for granted and it's never gonna work for them. So the point about this is, well, just a reminder. Everything there is as meaning in this world is our own creation. We have been playing and toying with our minds because all we want is, we are obsessed with control. And as long as you chase control, you will always be in a sense of need. And when you feel that you need, you feel like you never have enough. And when you feel you never have enough, you will always suffer because it's never gonna be enough. So, well, all this being said, you are appreciated, take care of yourselves, well, become more introspective, and you will see that most, if not all, the answers that you're looking for are there, within you, inside of you, carefully concealed in a way, but desperately waiting for you, or well, let's say kindly and lovingly waiting for you to unravel them. All this being said, take care. You are loved and appreciated. Whatever you are doing is the best you can at the right pace for you. Ferenc Bor signing out.